What is up, guys? Delboy here. So the cruiserweight division is the division that just keeps on giving. Historically, fans have never been drawn to the cruiserweight division, due to a lack of names. No real sort of A-list fighters in that division. We've had one or two over the years, like Evander Holyfield and David Haye, but even those guys only really got their sort of widespread acclaim when they went up to heavyweight. Cruiserweight historically has never been a fan favourite division, but I think the last 2 or 3 years, hardcore boxing fans have really grown to love the cruiserweight division. And in reality, if you know your boxing, there's not many divisions who've got such a number of punchers and really dangerous fighters, and also skillful fighters too. Guys like Usyk, guys like him as well. There's some skillful guys in there as well. But in the cruiserweight division, it's just a lot of punchers, a lot of guys who are aggressive fighters and go for that knockout. So it's a entertaining division. If you want blood and guts and skill, then cruiserweights are for you. There's some great fighters there that you need to check out. But Marco Huck versus Mairis Briedis is a fight that is scheduled for the 1st of April, and it is for the WBC interim cruiserweight title. And obviously Tony Bellew holds the actual belt when he beat Makabu, and he's obviously fighting David Haye in a heavyweight fight. So the WBC gave him permission to take that fight as a sort of special occasion. And in the meantime, these two guys will fight for the interim belt, and Tony Bellew will have to fight the winner of this fight, or if he gets stripped, the winner of this fight will be champion automatically. So yeah, it's a good fight. Mairis Briedis comes into this fight with a record of 21 wins, 0 defeats, 0 draws, and 18 of those wins coming by way of knockout. Whereas Marco Huck, more battle-tested, comes into this fight with a record of 40 wins, 3 defeats and 1 draw, 27 of those wins coming by way of knockout. And when you look at two guys, instantly you're drawn to the gap in experience in top-level cruiserweight action. Marco Huck's been there, done it. He's tied the most number of defences at cruiserweight with Johnny Nelson. He's beat some good fighters in his time too. He's beaten guys like Ola Afolabi, Thira Arslan. He done very well against Alexander Povetkin at heavyweight. He's had some good fights in his time, and he's picked up some good wins along the way, as well as some controversial ones as well. But Marco Huck is a tough guy. He's got a weird, awkward style, but he's kind of a brawler type of fighter. Really unorthodox. Sometimes it can make for ugly fights. Sometimes it can make for really good fights. But Marco Huck is battle-tested and definitely has the edge in experience. But Mairis Briedis obviously comes into this fight with, he's a fresher guy. He's actually the same age as Marco Huck, 32, but he's been in less wars, he's had less fights, and he's taken less damage. So he's definitely the fresher guy out of the two. And, he's on the up in his career, and maybe Marco Huck might just be a couple of steps past his best now. So I think it's an interesting fight. I think these guys are fighting at the right time, whereas one guy's going up, one guy's coming down, and the levels might be kind of equal now. So yeah, I think this is a really good fight stylistically. I'm kind of edging towards Mairis Briedis. We've seen in the past, if you've seen the cruiserweight division, that Marco Huck can be outboxed. We saw that against Steve Cunningham. I felt also that Thira Arslan outboxed Marco Huck in their first fight. And even Ola Afolabi, even those fights were kind of wars, to me, Afolabi, he always seemed the more sort of the outboxer in that fight. But, Marco Huck, he's a good fighter, but he can definitely be outboxed. He is susceptible to a guy that moves, because ultimately he's he's a cumbersome guy. He doesn't really cut off a ring that well. He just sort of tries to lean in on you and sort of outwork you and bash you up that way. He doesn't really do anything special when it comes to cutting off a ring. He'll just keep on following you, and sometimes that's enough when you've got a guy like that following you. And these guys don't have the gas tanks of lighter weights because they're big guys. And sometimes at cruiserweight that's enough, when you're persistent with it and you keep on working your man, even though you might not be cutting off a ring that effectively. But Marco Huck always gets the job done. And it's going to be interesting to see how he can impose his will on Mairis Briedis. Marco Huck could definitely old man Briedis. He can definitely out-tough him and drag him into deep waters and drown him. That's a possibility. But I definitely see Mairis Briedis as the better boxer. He's actually an underrated fighter. People rave about Usyk, and rightly so. But Mairis Briedis is a good fighter. Maybe not Usyk level, but he's a good fighter. I mean, go back to the Manuel Char fight, which he took at heavyweight. He knocked out Manuel Char cold. And Manuel Char, nobody says he's a great heavyweight. He's a solid C-level guy who can make for good fights at European level. But ultimately, he's limited, but he's tough. But regardless of that, you can argue Mairis Briedis for cruiserweight done a better job than Povetkin and Vitaly Klitschko, beating Manuel Char. He comprehensively outboxed Char and knocked him out with this beautiful uppercut counter on the retreat. He was actually backing up when he threw the uppercut, and he knocked him out with it. And that's throwing punches on the back foot if you've boxed is actually incredibly hard in itself. But to throw an uppercut on the back foot to knock somebody out, that's very, very impressive to me. And he looked really good in that fight. He's also got a win over Ola Duradola, a tough Nigerian cruiserweight. And he had some tough moments in that fight, but ultimately Briedis was the more skilled guy, and he broke down Duradola to stop him. I felt Duradola was in the fight, but ultimately, he didn't have the boxing skills to get to Briedis the way he wanted to, and Briedis got him out of there late on in that fight. So Briedis has fought opposition. He's not fought a complete scrubs. He has fought some guys, and he's looked good doing it. And I just feel with Briedis' boxing style and the way he fights, I feel that he's going to have enough to outpoint Marco Huck. Having said that, it's in Germany. We've seen Marco Huck get some very, very questionable decisions. So even if we think Briedis wins it, he might not get the decision. So that's definitely worth keeping an eye out for. But ultimately, when you see both fighters, I think both guys can give the opposition trouble. But in terms of skills and talent, you've got to give it to Briedis. He's a fresher guy. Marco Huck seems to be slipping a little bit. He looked good against Dmitry Kutcher, but he still looked kind of one-paced in that fight. Ultimately, I just think the timing's right for Briedis to win this fight and get a decision. But we'll see what happens. Tell me what you guys think of the fight. Am I underrating Marco Huck? Am I overrating Mairis Briedis? Tell me what you guys think. From what I've seen of Briedis, he's really impressed me. But maybe you guys don't agree. Tell me what you guys think. Peace.